Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown, and I see my good friend Matthew Stockton there in his lovely place in Vancouver. How are you today, Matthew?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
You were mentioning that your carpet matches your drapes.
Yes, I'm wearing two-piece stripy shorts and shirt today.
Oh, very nice, very nice. You look like a candy cane.
My husband said I look like a pair of curtains, so there you go.
Oh, Justin.
Oh, Justin.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of CuriousCast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
In this episode, we journey into the chilling case of Jesse Imeson, a man whose troubled past and violent crimes left a deep scar on southwestern Ontario. In the summer of 2007, Imeson's name became synonymous with fear as he embarked on a deadly spree taking 3 innocent lives. The victims were Carlos Rivera, 25, of Windsor, Hélène Regier, 72, and her husband, Bill Regier, 73, near the community of Grand Bend. The discovery of the murders sparked a 12-day nationwide manhunt and led to the capture of the killer in Portage du Fort, Quebec, near the Ontario border. Behind the headlines lies a story of trauma, addiction, and claims of childhood abuse that may have shaped the path to Imeson's horrific acts. This is Dark Poutine episode 370, Summer of Fear, the Carlos Rivera and Regier family murders. Southwestern Ontario's history stretches back over 11,000 years, beginning with the arrival of Paleo-Indian hunters who followed migrating herds along the shores of ancient glacial lakes. Over millennia, the region became home to diverse indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois, Huron-Wendat, Attawandaron, also known as Neutral, Lenape, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples. These First Nations developed complex societies, managed the land, and maintained their own cultural and political systems, often marked by seasonal movement and deep spiritual ties to the territory. European contact in the 17th century brought French explorers and traders, followed by waves of British settlement in the 18th and 19th centuries. Colonial expansion, land treaties, and the imposition of reserves dramatically altered indigenous life, though many communities resisted assimilation and maintained traditional practices well into the modern era. The 19th century also saw southwestern Ontario become a beacon for freedom seekers via the Underground Railroad, with black communities settling in Essex County, Chatham, Kent, and beyond. through the 20th century, the region evolved into a prosperous agricultural and industrial heartland shaped by waves of immigration, urban growth, and social change. By the early 2000s, southwestern Ontario was a diverse, vibrant area, yet, like much of Canada, it still grappled with the legacies of colonialism, inequality, and unresolved trauma.
On the positive side.
On the positive side.
I don't want to leave my home area with unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
Beautiful landscape dotted with many quaint small towns. A great place to grow up.
It looks like it really does.
A lot of salt of the earth, hardworking people that live off the land. And, it was mostly farm, even back when I was there, but real sense of community there. It's a great place.
You have written here that your family's been there since the early 1800s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so like from this very specific area, like 1820s, 30s, I think.
That's pretty cool. In the summer of 2007, this peaceful landscape was shattered by a shocking crime spree, one that would leave 3 people dead and the entire region on edge, as the name Jesse Imeson became synonymous with fear and tragedy. Imeson's first victim was Carlos Rivera. Carlos' story is one of resilience, hope, and quiet heroism, a life shaped by hardship yet defined by compassion and ambition. Born in El Salvador on August 30th, 1981 during the brutal Civil War, Carlos and his family endured years of terror, displacement, and uncertainty. As a child, he witnessed the violence that swept through his homeland with military groups targeting civilians, villages bombed, and children like himself at constant risk. Fleeing first to Guatemala, then Uruguay, Carlos began working in a shoe factory at the age of 12 to help support his family. In 1996, at age 15, Carlos and his family found refuge in Canada, settling in LaSalle, Ontario. He quickly became the backbone of the Rivera household, especially after his parents' separation and his mother's move to Florida. Carlos' father, Carlos Sr., described him as more than just a son. Carlos was a contributor to the family in many ways, including financially, and he cared deeply for his 3 younger brothers for whom he felt a strong sense of responsibility. Carlos encouraged his siblings to seize the opportunity Canada offered, insisting they work hard in school and aim high. Carlos's spirit of service extended not only to his family but also to strangers in need. For example, after a recent hurricane in Louisiana, Carlos had gone to assist in rebuilding homes with Habitat for Humanity for people affected by the disaster. Carlos was known for his work ethic and reliability, often juggling multiple jobs in retail and hospitality. He rose to supervisory and managerial roles, and by his early 20s was bartending at local gay bars in Windsor, where he was open about his sexuality and found a sense of community. Yet his ambitions extended beyond work. Carlos was a gifted artist, passionate about sketching, painting, and writing poetry. He dreamed of studying architecture and was on the cusp of completing his first year at St. Clair College in Windsor.
So let's stop and talk about this guy for a second.
Yes, please.
A Habitat for Humanity.
Yep.
There's a real moral geometry to this guy. He was fleeing violence, then becomes somebody who actually repairs things in the aftermath of like Habitat for Humanity, right?
Yeah.
And he's transmuted sort of the problems he had when he was younger into purpose, and that's rare and quite profound.
Right.
And I think, Southwestern Ontario, like, This was a good kid, right? They lost somebody an important community member there.
Yeah.
Like a person doing good,
He seems to be the antithesis of the person who killed him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he was giving back. He was a force for good in his community, just an all-around good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the challenges he faced, Carlos never lost his warmth or his connection to his family. He spoke daily with his brother Javier and kept family photos close, a reminder of the journey they had shared. As his 26th birthday approached in the summer of 2007, Carlos was looking forward to visiting his mother in Florida, a trip that filled him with anticipation and nostalgia. In a touching phone call, he told his mother Maria how much he missed her as he browsed through old family albums, reminiscing about their past. During the call, Carlos told his mom he had recently taken a job at The Tap, a Windsor gay bar known for its nude male dancers, where he worked as a bartender and DJ. Carlos had told his mom this was a temporary gig and that he was looking for other work. Carlos's kindness and generosity extended to his friends and community. He often gave away his artwork as thoughtful gifts, preferring to share his creations with those who would genuinely appreciate them. Though he was proud of his achievements, Carlos remained humble, quietly supporting those around him and striving to make a better life for himself and loved ones. On the evening of Tuesday, July 17, 2007, staff at the Tap noticed a heavily tattooed, brown-eyed man in his 20s who seemed to be aggressively hitting on Carlos at his DJ booth throughout the evening. At the end of Carlos's shift, the two men left the bar together and were seen driving out of the parking lot in Rivera's silver 1996 Honda Civic. When Carlos failed to show up for work for the next 2 days and could not be reached, concern turned to alarm. Carlos Rivera's absence was out of character, prompting worry and efforts to get in touch with him. Calls to his phone went unanswered, and co-workers, growing increasingly anxious, decided to call the police. When the police arrived, the bar staff described the man Carlos had driven off with as being approximately 6 foot 1 inches tall, weighing around 200 pounds, with a short brown buzz cut. The man fit the description of a man they were already quite familiar with, 22-year-old Jesse Norman Imeson. Police went to the boarding house on Erie Street West, where Imeson was known to rent a room, and discovered a terrible scene. Imeson was nowhere to be found. He'd been gone since early Wednesday morning, the day after he was last seen with Carlos. Inside Imeson's sparsely furnished room, on the bed, was the lifeless body of Carlos Rivera. The room was left in disarray, suggesting a struggle had occurred before Rivera was overpowered. Rivera's body bore the clear marks of manual strangulation, as well as a belt, still present, that had been used to finish the job. Pathologists determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation by ligature. Along with Imeson, Carlos's car was also missing. Police assumed that Imeson had used it to make his escape and added it to the bolo, be on the lookout alert, issued for Jesse, who they desperately wanted to talk to about Carlos's murder. According to a detailed article in the London Free Press, Jesse Imeson's life began in Amherstburg, Ontario, where he was remembered as a lively, mischievous child with huge eyes and an infectious smile. His babysitter, Cheryl White, called him, quote, a little turd, remembering, quote, he would chase me through the house with a water gun. He was a jokester, always smiling, trying to have fun, end quote. But his playful energy masked a childhood marked by profound trauma. At age 9, Jesse discovered his father's body after his father died by suicide at just 27 years old, a loss that deeply scarred young Jesse. Quote, his dad was his hero. He started to get out of hand, and that's how he was reacting to the devastation, Cheryl White explained. After his father's death, Jesse became too much for his mother to manage, and he was placed in foster care, separating him from his siblings. Children's aid societies later described this as abandonment, though family members said his mother, quote, did it for him because she couldn't cope with his behavior at the time. Jesse moved to Leamington, attended Queen Elizabeth Elementary, and was remembered by classmates as, quote, a little rough but decent kid, end quote. Jesse's foster family soon found themselves unable to manage his increasingly difficult behavior. By the age of 11, he was placed at Maryvale Adolescent and Family Services, a center for troubled youth. Court documents reveal that during his time there, Jesse became immersed in an environment marked by risky sexual behavior and substance abuse. He also developed a reputation for using intimidation and violence to command fear and respect among his peers. After 6 months at Maryvale, Jesse was shuffled back into the foster care system, including a period living with relatives. The behavioral problems that had surfaced in his childhood only intensified as he moved through his teenage years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where troubled youth becomes a dangerous man.
Right.
Right, and Jesse, whatever this guy's, what's his last name again? Sorry, there's a point where a troubled youth becomes a dangerous man, and this guy crossed the line long before he ever killed, right? Mm-hmm. And it gets to the point where you're not looking at a broken boy, you're looking at an adult male predator.
Right, it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. Despite graduating grade 8 and starting high school, Jesse Imeson drifted between relatives' homes with family members describing him as unworkable despite their efforts. In high school, Jesse developed a reputation as a hard-partying bad boy, and he was known for his tough talk, constant smoking, and heavy drinking, but friends said he wasn't a bully. He could be charming, especially with women, and maintained a circle of friends. He dropped out in grade 11 and began a pattern of instability, marked by frequent run-ins with the law for petty crimes like robbery and possession of stolen goods. Imeson's adult life was turbulent and not remotely stable. He had a daughter with a girlfriend but struggled to maintain steady employment. In a surprising turn, he enrolled in a police foundations course at a Windsor college, hoping for a fresh start as a father. However, after graduation, he couldn't find work and drifted west to Whistler, BC, before returning to Windsor after his daughter's birth. Drug addiction, particularly to cocaine, became a significant factor in his life. He completed a 40-day rehabilitation program at the Salvation Army Addiction and Rehabilitation Center, where he was described as a, quote, model client, but he relapsed soon after. By the summer of 2007, Imeson was living in a Windsor rooming house, telling landlords and friends that he had a military background, even sporting a tattoo of a Chinese character on his neck, which meant soldier. Police later refuted Imeson's claims of military service. He kept photos of his daughter in his room and was still in an on and off relationship with her mother. Friends and acquaintances described him as polite and quiet to some, but unpredictable to others. Tattoo artist Jeff Vella recalled that Imeson was, quote, hyper and high-strung, sometimes unable to sit still for more than 5 minutes and had to be removed from the shop due to his behavior.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's life wasn't tragic. It was chaotic by his own making, right?
Yeah.
He's a liar, manipulator. He's an escalator. The signs weren't subtle, right? There's tons of signs here.
Yeah.
And maybe people just didn't want to believe how bad it could get with this guy.
Yeah, I read that his family was shocked when he did the things that he did. But I mean, we sort of see a progression throughout this guy's life. I mean, he went from zero to murder seemingly very quickly, but
it wasn't zero, was it?
No, it was sort of like around 75.
Right? He was like, just look at everything you've just said about the guy, right?
Yeah, hovering in a bad place.
It's all leading up to lying about you're being sold, like all this stuff. It's like fantasist.
Yeah. Up to the discovery of Carlos Rivera's body in his room, Jesse Imeson's criminal history was primarily small time. Jesse was now wanted for murder, a significant escalation, and unknown to police at that point was not done yet. He was on the run. After leaving the boarding house in Windsor, Jesse Imeson drove more than 200 kilometers north to the Grand Bend area, a popular lakeside community on Lake Huron. Upon arriving in Grand Bend, Imeson attempted to blend in and continued his pattern of seeking companionship and distraction. He soon met Lindsay Glavin, a local teenager from South Huron, at a bar in the area. The two spent time together over the next couple of days, socializing and even beginning a brief romantic relationship. Imeson, known for his ability to charm and manipulate, told Glavin little about his past or the violence he had just committed. Instead, he presented himself as a drifter seeking work and adventure. Lindsay and her mother welcomed him into their home, and he stayed for the next 2 nights. For several days, Imeson and Lindsay were seen together around Grand Bend. When Lindsay's mom saw Jesse's photo on the TV news concerning Carlos Rivera's murder, she was more than a little concerned. She didn't, however, turn him in. Instead, she told him he had to leave. On Friday, July 20th, Lindsay Glavin ended their short relationship and drove Imeson out to a field in Stephen Township, north of Mount Carmel Line, where she dropped him off. Police would later comb that area for clues, assisted by Lindsay Glavin, who'd since called Crime Stoppers but called off the search when nothing but Carlos's silver Honda was found and impounded. Now alone, Imeson wandered the rural countryside, moving east toward the small farming community of Mount Carmel. He broke into an empty cottage, and there he stole a .22 caliber rifle, 200 bullets, and a jacket. He was on foot, desperate and increasingly unpredictable. On July 22, 2007, Imeson arrived at the home of Bill and Helene Rigier in Mount Carmel. The encounter was not random. Imeson was seeking shelter, supplies, and perhaps a vehicle to aid his escape. He entered the Regiers' farmhouse, setting in motion the next stage of his deadly crime spree. More after a quick break. And we are back, Matthew. Thoughts?
This story's hard, but the second part is difficult as well, the second half we're going into.
Yeah.
Because, you have Bill and Helen, who, real pillars of the community as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, just quiet, simple people defined by their faith, their family, their work, right? And in their own home, right? They had this guy come in and kill them. And I think what's chilling about all of this is the randomness of these killings, these murders from this guy, right? There wasn't revenge. It wasn't personal, right? It was just all weird, opportunistic, empty killing that just feels like it had no reason whatsoever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have written here he wasn't there to settle scores. He killed because people were in his way. Yeah, exactly. Bill and Helene Regier were the heart of their family and pillars of their rural community near Grand Bend, Ontario. They had deep roots in Huron County, where generations of Regiers and Farwells had lived, worked, and worshipped. Both were born into large, close-knit Catholic families and spent their entire lives in the Dashwood and Mount Carmel area, surrounded by farmland and the rhythms of small-town life. Bill Regier was born William Michael Regier to Joe and Mary Regier, one of several siblings in a family known for its strong work ethic and deep faith. Bill grew up learning the values of responsibility and neighborliness that defined rural Ontario. As a young man, he took to farming, working the land with a sense of pride and stewardship. His hands were those of a man who knew the soil, and his days were shaped by the seasons and the needs of his crops and animals. Bill was known for his quiet strength, gentle humor, and unwavering dependability. Friends and neighbors described him as someone you could always count on, whether you needed help with a harvest or a sympathetic ear after Sunday Mass. Helen Regier, born Farwell, came from a similarly large and loving family. She was remembered for her warmth, generosity, and a deep devotion to her children and grandchildren. Helene's siblings and extended family remained close throughout her life, and she was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and the small details that made others feel cherished. She was active in her parish, volunteering for church events and supporting community initiatives. Helene was known for her home-cooked meals, her love of gardening, and the way she made everyone feel welcome at her kitchen table. Together, Bill and Helene built a life centered on faith, family, and service. They raised 6 children, Dan, David, Doug, Derek, Carol, and Dale, instilling in them the same values of hard work, kindness, and community involvement. Their home was a gathering place, filled with laughter, stories, and the bustle of their 16 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Holidays and Sunday dinners were occasions for the extended family to come together, and the Regiers' hospitality was legendary in the community. The involvement extended beyond their family. Bill and Helene were active members of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Roman Catholic Church, where they attended Mass regularly and participated in parish life. They were known for their generosity, whether it was lending a hand to a neighbor, supporting local charities, or simply offering a warm smile and a kind word to those they met. In their later years, Bill and Helene enjoyed the simple pleasures of rural life. They could often be found sitting together on their front porch, watching the sunset over the fields or tending to their garden. They took pride in their children's accomplishments and delighted in the antics of their grandchildren. Their days were filled with purpose and contentment, rooted in the land and the community they loved. Family members have spoken movingly about the example Bill and Helene set. Their daughter, Carol Denami, described them as, quote, selfless people who live their entire lives for everyone around them, end quote.
Yeah, and again, this couple represent everything that he wasn't, right? Just like our last victim. Very different people, right? Very different people, but all three of them good people. The Regiers, built a life rooted on service, and he tore it apart. And I just don't understand for what purpose. Like, all of this seems so senseless. All of it is so senseless.
Yeah. As dusk settled over the rolling fields of Huron County on July 22nd, 2007, Bill and Helene Regier returned to their farmhouse, hearts full from a family dinner in London. Their anticipation of their son Dan's visit next morning added a note of warmth to the quiet evening. Their home, a place of comfort and tradition, stood as a beacon of stability amid the rural landscape, a place where grandchildren played, neighbors dropped by, and the couple's deep faith was lived out in everyday acts of kindness. But as Bill and Helene prepared for bed, a different presence lingered on their property. Jesse Imeson had been sheltering in their barn, hidden from view. For days he had survived on whatever he could scavenge, haunted by the knowledge that police were closing in. The Regiers, unaware of the danger, went about their evening routines. Imeson's desperation had reached a breaking point. He was cold, hungry, and needed a vehicle to continue his flight from justice. Armed with a .22 caliber rifle stolen from a nearby farm, he made his way from the barn to the house, his mind set on whatever it would take to survive. The decision to break in was not impulsive. It was calculated. The sound of shattering glass must have echoed through the farmhouse, startling Bill and Helene from their peace. Jesse Imeson entered through the broken window, his presence immediately threatening. He confronted the couple, forcing them at gunpoint to the basement. Court documents and victim impact statements reveal the horror that unfolded. Imeson searched the basement for anything to restrain the Regiers. He tied Helene's hands in front of her with a telephone cord, rendering her helpless. For Bill, Imeson used an iron cord, binding his arms to the rafters and pipes in a crucifixion-like pose, a detail that would haunt their family and community for years to come. The cruelty of the act was chilling, a calculated effort to dominate and humiliate.
Yeah, this wasn't just a murder; it was a desecration in a way. It's a weird, twisted performance. Like he's meaning to degrade and to scar the people that find the dead. Like it's just cruel.
The violence perpetrated on the peaceful older couple was swift and merciless. Jesse Imeson shot Helene 4 times, the bullets striking her chin, shoulder, neck, and chest. She fell on the floor, bleeding and helpless. Bill, forced to witness his wife's murder, was then shot twice in the chest and once in the temple and left suspended by his restraints. In those final moments, the Regiers endured unimaginable fear, their lives taken for not personal vengeance or hatred, but for the most banal of motives: money, supplies, and a means to escape. After the murders, Imeson methodically ransacked the house. He took Bill's wallet, food from the kitchen, clothing, and several knives, packing them into a suitcase. He then stole the Regiers' 2006 GMC Sierra pickup truck, vanishing into the night and leaving behind a scene of devastation that would soon shake the entire province. The next day, Dan Regier arrived at the farmhouse, expecting a warm welcome and to spend the day with his parents. Instead, he was greeted by signs of chaos: a smashed window, the absence of the family truck, and an eerie silence inside the home. As he searched the house, dread mounting with every step, Dan discovered the unthinkable in the basement: the bodies of his parents. When investigators entered the Regier farmhouse on July 23, 2007, they were confronted with a scene of profound violence. Helene Regier was discovered lying on the basement floor, her hands still tied in front of her. The pattern and placement of the bullet wounds she'd suffered suggested that she'd been shot at close range and left to bleed to death on the cold concrete. The violence inflicted upon her was both personal and brutal. Bill Regier was found suspended by his arms, positioned in a way that resembled a crucifixion. First responders had never seen anything like it. Around the basement, signs of a hurried search were evident. Drawers pulled open, personal belongings scattered, and evidence that the killer had ransacked their home for valuables, food, and clothing. Forensic investigators meticulously documented the scene. They found size 12 Nike shoe prints imprinted in the dust and debris, Shell casings from a .22 caliber rifle were recovered. News of the double homicide spread rapidly. Even before the Regiers' names were made public, police identified Jesse Imeson as the prime suspect, linking him to the crime scene through size 12 Nike shoe prints matching the shoes he was known to wear. News outlets like the London Free Press and CBC News ran banner headlines, quote, "Triple murder manhunt grips region," and "Killer on the loose." The Ontario Provincial Police, OPP, launched a massive operation deploying helicopters, canine units, and officers from multiple jurisdictions. Roadblocks were set up along highways, and police urged residents to report any sightings of the Regiers' stolen 2006 GMC Sierra pickup truck. Acting OPP Commissioner Chris Lewis held daily press briefings, his stern warnings underscoring the gravity of the situation. Quote, "This individual is armed, dangerous, and unpredictable. Do not approach him." End quote. Social media platforms buzzed with speculation, while local talk radio hosts fielded calls from terrified listeners. In Grand Bend, a popular summer tourist destination, businesses reported a drop in visitors as fear overshadowed the usual lakeside revelry at the many cottages there. In a region where people rarely locked their doors and neighbors looked out for one another, fear and anxiety took hold. Quote, "It changed the way we lived," one neighbor later told the London Free Press. "For the first time we are afraid in our own homes." End quote. The Regiers, who had spent their lives building trust and connection, became the tragic symbol of a community's lost innocence. Quote, "It felt like our whole region was holding its breath," recalled a neighbor in Mount Carmel. "You'd look at every passing car wondering if it was him." End quote.
Yeah, and what Emerson stole from the region wasn't just the three lives, but their sense of, like, the community sense of safety, right?
Yeah.
You know, these are quiet farms and trusting neighborhoods, right? And of course, something like this similar happened in exactly the same way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised some of these murders were a few hundred meters away from episode 186, the Mad Slasher of Strathroy.
Probably, yeah.
This was literally right there, but that was back in the 70s, right? So community recovers from that, and decades on, something similar happens again.
Right. For the victims' families, the sudden glare of publicity compounded their grief. Carlos Rivera's father, Carlos Sr., gave an emotional interview to the Windsor Star describing his son, quote, as a good boy who worked hard for his family. He recounted how Carlos had fled civil war in El Salvador as a child, only to meet a violent end in Canada. Quote, "We thought this country would protect him. Now we have no answers." End quote. The Regier children, still reeling from the discovery of their parents' bodies, released a statement through police. "Our parents were kind and loving people. We are devastated and demand justice." End quote. For days, Ontario held its breath, waiting for news of Jesse Imeson's capture, as police issued a Canada-wide warrant for his arrest on 3 counts of first-degree murder. In addition to the massive manhunt, the U.S. television show America's Most Wanted even listed Imeson on its website, amplifying public awareness and urgency. Imeson drove the Regiers' stolen pickup truck northeast, covering more than 600 kilometers before abandoning it in the woods near Renfrew, Ontario, close to the Quebec border. The discovery of the truck heightened anxiety in nearby communities, with residents in both Ontario and Quebec locking their doors and anxiously watching for any sign of the fugitive. Quote, "People killing other people. I can't believe it," said Sylvia Turcott, a resident near where the truck was found. In the days that followed, Imeson survived by breaking into cottages and rural homes, stealing food and supplies. Police in Quebec began investigating a string of break-ins in the Portage du Fort area, suspecting Imeson might be responsible. The search intensified when Dale Lewis, a local cottager, spotted a suspicious figure inside a neighbor's cottage. Hearing a television on inside, Lewis peered through a window and glimpsed someone ducking behind a post. Realizing the danger, he quietly retreated and alerted a retired Ottawa police officer nearby. Together they called police, providing precise information that would prove crucial. Within minutes, Quebec Provincial Police, in coordination with the OPP, surrounded the area with helicopters and canine teams. By 8:45 p.m. on July 31, 2007, officers had Imeson cornered in dense brush near the Ottawa River. Armed with 2 rifles, including a loaded weapon, Imeson did not attempt to fight or flee. He dropped to the floor beside his gun and surrendered without resistance. Quote, he had nowhere to go, Sergeant Michael Brunet of the Quebec Police later expressed, with relief that the apprehension ended peacefully despite the obvious danger.
Yeah, and of course he gave up because predators like him are cowards really at the core, aren't they? They're dangerous when they hold power, but they're pathetic the moment that it slips away. And we've seen that again and again and again. When they're holding power, like they're these dangerous people, as soon as they don't have control, they're just absolutely pathetic.
Yeah. Imeson was immediately taken into custody and after a brief hospital visit for minor complaints was flown back to Windsor, Ontario to face charges. The sense of collective relief was palpable. Quote, the people of Windsor, Mount Carmel, and Grand Bend, in fact all the people of Ontario, can go to bed tonight confident that we have taken a dangerous person off the streets of our communities, said OPP Acting Commissioner Chris Lewis. On October 24, 2008, Jesse Imeson stood in a Windsor courtroom and pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder, avoiding a trial that would have forced families to relive the crimes in excruciating detail. The plea deal, negotiated by his defense team, spared victims' loved ones the ordeal of testifying, but left many grappling with unresolved anger. Quote, I wanted him to look me in the eye and explain why, Carlos Rivera's brother Javier later told CBC News, but he never did, end quote. Justice Roland Haynes, presiding over the case, sentenced Imeson to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years, the maximum penalty for second-degree murder. In his ruling, Haynes condemned the killings as, quote, savage, senseless, and devoid of humanity, emphasizing the calculated cruelty of Imeson's actions. He singled out the murder of Bill Regier, who had been found in a, quote, dehumanizing crucifixion pose as evidence of Imeson's, quote, capacity for utter depravity. The judge also noted Imeson's lack of remorse, stating, quote, you have shown no recognition of the pain you've inflicted, only a desire to evade consequences, end quote.
Yeah, no remorse, no recognition. He just evasion and manipulation right up to the end. You know, it's not that he didn't understand what he did. He did, and he didn't care, right?
Victim impact statements laid bare the enduring trauma. Carlos Rivera's family described their, quote, never-ending nightmare, with his father lamenting, quote, we buried our son in a country he trusted to keep him safe, end quote. The Regier's daughter, Carol Denami, delivered a searing indictment of Imeson's actions. Quote, you didn't just kill our parents, you murdered our past, our present, and our future, end quote. Bill's brother, Paul Regier, addressed Imeson directly. Quote, you are a predator who deserves no mercy. Your name will be forgotten, but our family's pain will remain, end quote.
That's the real-life sentence here.
Yeah.
Right? Not the murderer's prison term, but the families of the Regiers and Rivera, you know, their pain has no parole.
Paul continued his statement saying, quote, Bill and Helene looked evil in the eye. This tragic event has opened wounds of despair. There is no justice. Neither sentence nor compensation will euthanize our sense of loss and anger, end quote. Outside the courtroom, the sentencing brought little closure. Quote, life in prison doesn't feel like enough, Helene Regier's niece told reporters. How do you measure a life against 25 years? End quote. For the broader community, the case sparked debates about Canada's parole system and whether sentences for multiple murders adequately reflect the severity of the crimes. Carlos Rivera's family later said that his loss was immeasurable. Quote, Carlos, in a way, helped take a demon out of society, end quote. They described Imeson as embodying, quote, the worst in human nature, a stark contrast to the light Carlos brought to those who knew him. Years into his sentence, Jesse Imeson filed a $12.5 million civil lawsuit against Maryvale Adolescent and Family Services, a Windsor-based facility for troubled youth where he had spent 6 months as a teenager. Court documents alleged that staff and peers at Maryvale subjected him to, quote, systematic sexual, physical, and psychological abuse during his stay, creating a culture of predation that exacerbated his violent tendencies. Imeson claimed he was, quote, groomed, exploited, and traumatized, end quote, at the facility, with staff ignoring his reports of abuse by older residents. Quote, Maryvale failed him at every turn, his lawyer argued in a 2017 affidavit. They took a damaged boy and broke him further, end quote. Maryvale vehemently denied the allegations, calling them, quote, unsubstantiated and inflammatory. The organization argued that Imeson's lawsuit was filed far beyond Ontario's statute of limitations for civil claims, a legal hurdle that initially led to the case's dismissal. However, in a landmark 2020 ruling, the Ontario Court of Appeal allowed the lawsuit to proceed, citing, quote, exceptional circumstances and potential, quote, systemic failures at Maryvale. The decision reignited debates about institutional accountability and the lasting impact of childhood trauma. Legal experts weighed in on the case's complexities. University of Ottawa law professor David Tanovich told CBC News that Imeson's claims, quote, highlighted, quote, the fraught intersection of trauma and criminal responsibility. Trauma doesn't excuse violence, he said, but understanding its role is critical to prevention, end quote. Victims' families, however, expressed frustration at what they saw as an attempt to deflect blame. Quote, he's using this as a get-out-of-jail-free card, said Carlos Rivera's brother Javier. Nothing justifies what he did, end quote. The lawsuit remains unresolved as of 2025, with Maryvale continuing to contest the allegations. For advocates of institutional reform, the case underscores the need for greater oversight in youth care facilities. Quote, this isn't just about Imeson, said a spokesperson for the Canadian Centre for Abuse Awareness. It's about ensuring no child endures what he claims happened, end quote.
Yeah, and let's be clear, even if those allegations are true, they don't explain or excuse what he did.
Nope.
You know, he wasn't lashing out at his past. He was erasing the future of innocent people. And he's still trying to avoid consequences and blame others and maybe make some money. Right? And quite frankly, I'm sorry, if those allegations are true, look into the system and figure out the other kids that were hurt that haven't gone on to murder and get justice for them. But this guy, it's like, throw him away, throw him in jail, don't give him any money. Like, you're gone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Right?
Do not pass go kind of thing.
Right? Just sort of, he's just trying to, like, deflect blame.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of bad things happen to a lot of people, and they do not become vicious murderers.
No. In LaSalle, a memorial scholarship in the name of Carlos Rivera was established at St. Clair College, supporting aspiring artists and architects. Quote, Carlos believed in building a better future, his father said at the scholarship's unveiling. This keeps his dream alive, end quote. Psychologists and criminologists continue to study Imeson's case as a textbook example of how trauma, addiction, and institutional failure can converge with deadly consequences. Quote, he's a product of every system that failed him, said Dr. Helen Morrison, a forensic psychiatrist who reviewed the case, but he's also a reminder that evil isn't born, it's made, end quote. Yet for the families of Carlos Rivera and the Regiers, such analyses offer little solace. Quote, we don't care why he did it, Carol Denami said bluntly. We just want the world to remember who our parents were, not the monster who killed them, end quote. As Jesse Imeson serves his sentence at Millhaven Institution, a maximum security prison near Kingston, Ontario, his name occasionally resurfaces in debates about parole reform and trauma-informed justice. But for those closest to the case, the passage of time has done little to dull the pain. Quote, there's no moving on, Paul Regier said in a 2021 interview. There's only living with the hole he left behind, end quote. And that's it for Dark Poutine, episode 370, Summer of Fear, the Carlos Rivera and Regier family murders.
That's right, it's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Alrighty, let's listen to our first voicemail, and it's related to a recent episode.
Hi guys, it's Gigi from Victoria, and I just want to say thank you for doing the show on the nurse who was not a nurse. I cannot believe the systemic failures that happen, not just in BC, but anyhow, I have been a registered nurse since 1990. I obtained my license. Then I trained in Ottawa and moved to BC, and I've been practicing ever since. And it's stories like this that are just so unfathomable. It breaks my heart that this person brought harm to so many. And obviously didn't give a flying about it. So anyhow, thank you for sharing that story. And Mike, I'm sorry that hospitals give you the heebie-jeebies, but I care for you and make sure you were okay. Hi, Matthew. Hope you're doing good too. I'm glad your treatment has gone well. Take care. Bye.
Wow, Gigi, thank you so much. Gigi from Victoria. And now I know I need to go to the hospital in Victoria so Gigi can be nice to me. Yeah.
Right. And see that right there, Mike, that's the problem with that woman who was faking. Like Gigi studied, she works hard.
Gigi's the real deal. Yeah.
She obviously cares, right? And then you get somebody like that and that just completely, like not completely, but starts to like erode the faith in the system and who's working there. It's a slap in the face to people.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, usually the crimes we talk about are, say 99% of the time they're murder, but this is sort of a similar thing. Like it's a murder of trust in a way. This fraudulent nurse.
That's assault, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's assault, and could be attempted or manslaughter or murdered if somebody had died.
Very possibly. Yep. Someone gets an infection or something. Or she gives somebody too much fentanyl.
Or the wrong meds, or like allergies, or the wrong blood, or something like that, right?
Yep. Yes. Make sure that woman...
Do you know what your blood type is?
I don't.
Neither do I, and it's really weird. I figured like I have this stuff pumping through me, keeps me alive, and I don't even know what kind it is. I think there's some glitter in it, but other than that, I don't know what... Yeah, I have glitter blood.
I asked my doctor...
I'm not a blue blood, I'm a glitter blood.
I asked my doctor what my blood type was, and he says, that's not important. And I was like, why isn't it important? And he says, do you donate blood? And I said, well, I have not, because I'm afraid of needles. And he says, the only time you'll ever need to know your blood type is if you've been injured, and that we can figure that out very quickly, or if you're donating blood.
What? So he went through all of that instead of just saying A positive or whatever?
Yes. He's very difficult at times.
What a dick.
He's actually quite a good guy, but
just tell Mike his blood type.
Yes, exactly. Maybe I should just spit in a tube and do something like that, and it'll tell me. I don't know. Maybe my ancestry DNA will tell me. Probably if I look. It's probably right there. Your blood type is this, dum-dum. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. Alrighty, we do have a couple of PayPal donations, and they're quite significant PayPal donations. First up, we have Cheryl Wilson. Thank you so much, Cheryl Wilson. I don't know where Cheryl is from or what she does for a living, Matthew, so we're going to need some help with that. Cheryl Wilson.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Is from Haida Gwaii.
Ooh, Haida Gwaii. That's fun.
Formerly known as Queen Charlotte Islands.
Yep.
Before that, they were called Haida Gwaii. Now they've been renamed Haida Gwaii again.
Right.
And I think Shell runs a fishing lodge in Haida Gwaii.
She runs a fishing lodge in Haida Gwaii. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that. I
High
would
end.
like
High end. People have to helicopter in to get to the lodge. Yeah.
a friend of mine used to do the IT for one of those fishing lodges, and it was a floating fishing lodge. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was so popular. People like Kevin Costner used to go there to fish, and it was way up north.
So your sort of mark of popularity is if Kevin Costner went?
Well, this was a long time ago, Matthew. This was Dances with Wolves time. So
When Kevin Costner was actually the shit.
he
right?
was, yes,
Yeah, he was back then.
I'm not
We
saying
actually
this is
we
now.
were watching a Kevin Costner movie recently,
Mhm.
and he goes, "Isn't it weird that Kevin Costner?" Justin turns to me, my husband, and says, "Isn't it weird Kevin Costner was the big actor at the time?" He's like, he's not particularly good looking. He's not a particularly good actor.
He's
but
kind of wooden. He's very wooden. Yeah.
Somehow he was like the big actor in the what was it, like early 90s sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
Anyway, Cheryl, I hope Kevin Costner goes to your fishing lodge.
There you go.
Because according to Mike, that is the height of success for fishing lodges. The Costner score. If you build it, they will fish.
If you build it, they will fish. Oh dear. So I don't know how to pronounce this last name, Beutel, but I'm going to say Butel. And it's Karen Butel is our next Donut Money donor. And Karen says, "Hi, Mike and Matthew. I finally finished listening to all the episodes with the first co-host, so I decided to send some money, some treat money. Doesn't need to be donuts. It took me over a year to get through the back catalog because I listen to the new ones as they come out and don't always go back in chronological order. Glad there are so many to choose from. I have been wanting to send something for a while now. Really appreciate all the work that you put into the shows. Hope my union doesn't call a strike next week." Oh dear. So I am suspecting Karen is a postal worker. I suspect that might be the thing. She may be a postal worker.
Yeah,
here in
because
Canada.
that's what's in the news right now. isn't it?
That is what's in the news, and we're hoping that doesn't happen either, and that everything is resolved.
Oh, I feel bad for who work. That's just a messy mess right now.
It really is.
It's a big messy mess. And there's so many people who are employed, and it's a difficult situation, man.
It's very it's very difficult, especially in the way that yes, people need more money to live, but no, there is no more money in that corporation, and it's losing money hand over fist. Yeah, it's very, very, very awful. So it's not a popular topic among Canadians right now. People are, it's very polarizing.
People with a higher pay grade than me are going to have to figure that one out.
Hopefully.
I'll tell you not that much.
Where is Karen from, Matthew? Have you taken a guess? Obviously, probably somewhere here in Canada.
Yes.
Okay. Where?
Southern Alberta.
Okay, Southern Alberta, like
Yeah.
Cochrane maybe, or something like that, or Lethbridge?
No, where Lethbridge, where Katie Lang's from.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're
she's
Kate.
Yeah, she's from Lethbridge.
So Karen probably has a constant craving for donuts, I would say.
And you can pronounce her last name Butel. I'm going to say Butel.
Butyl. Okay, I think I said Butyl.
Butel.
Okay, Butyl.
Butel sounds pretty.
It does. Anyway, Thank you so much, Karen.
Thanks,
and,
Karen.
And we hope things are resolved quickly.
Yeah, it's we're rooting for you. It's a horrible situation.
We're rooting for everybody. We're
Yeah.
rooting for the mail.
We're rooting for the mail. We're rooting for, I don't know, maybe they should just clear the debt and restart or something. I don't know.
Oh, God, who knows?
I know.
Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or Interac using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that's it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Bye all.
Bye.